Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we have an incredible and exciting story for you about a hero dog, loyalty, and mystery. Maxime, a German Shepherd, has very strange behavior at night. But what is he really trying to tell us? Get ready to uncover the mystery behind those growls and discover how he ends up saving his family from great danger. Don't miss any details of this thrilling story that will touch your heart. And before we start, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming adventures. Leave in the comments what city you are watching from, and share this story with anyone you think will also be moved. Let's get to the story. What would someone do if they discovered that the new family member was connected to a dark mystery? In Boulder, Colorado, a city surrounded by majestic mountains, Ethan and his daughter Emily face the challenge of rebuilding their lives after the tragic loss of his wife and her mother. The pain of absence weighs heavily on them, and loneliness becomes a constant companion. In search of comfort and security, Ethan decides to adopt Maxime, a German Shepherd who seems to be the perfect addition to the family. But soon, strange occurrences begin to unfold in the house, causing Ethan to question the true nature of his new friend. As daily life goes on, the home that should have been a welcoming place transforms into a space of unease. Maxime, who was supposed to bring joy, starts growling at an empty spot in Emily's room at night, his behavior becoming increasingly disturbing. The dog's behavior puts Ethan in a distressing dilemma. Is he just scared of something ordinary, or is there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? Ethan's mind, already marked by the pain of loss, begins to be consumed by the need to understand what is happening. Determined to solve the mystery, Ethan starts to investigate. Every night, the tension rises, and Maxime's growls echo like a warning. With the help of Jeaning, a friend who has knowledge of paranormal phenomena, Ethan finds himself immersed in deep questions. What could be so terrifying that it makes such a loyal dog show fear? As the situation intensifies, the home's security camera captures every suspicious movement, every bark that seems to resonate in an echo of pain and fear. When the tension reaches its peak, an intruder breaks into the house on a fateful night. Maxime, revealing his protective instinct, defends Emily with unexpected bravery, subduing the criminal until the police arrive. This heroic act reveals a side of the dog that Ethan never imagined existed. But what surprises Ethan even more is Maxime's past, which is filled with trauma and abuse. This revelation leads Ethan to reflect on his own emotional wounds and what it truly means to heal. As Ethan, Emily, and Maxime begin to form a deeper bond, the story transforms into a journey of overcoming and healing. What started as a simple desire for companionship becomes a discovery of the ties that bind both humans and animals. Maxime, the dog who seemed to be just a protector, ends up becoming a symbol of strength and resilience, proving that love and loyalty can blossom even in the darkest circumstances. With every moment of tension, the audience is drawn closer to a great revelation, eager to find out what will happen next. Ethan was immersed in a spiral of uncertainties. Every growl from Maxime echoed in his mind, as if the dog himself were trying to alert him to something he still couldn't understand. With a heavy heart, he wondered if he was really prepared to face yet another challenge in his life. The loss of his wife still hurt like an open wound, and now a new mystery loomed over them, threatening the fragile peace they were trying to build. One night, while watching the security camera for answers, Ethan noticed something strange. In one recording, Maxime seemed to fixate on a dark corner of the room, as if he were watching someone that no one else could see. The tension built in his chest. He didn't know if what he felt was fear or a growing determination to uncover the truth. He knew he needed to confront this situation, not just for himself, but also for Emily. The next day, he decided he needed help. Jean, a longtime friend and enthusiast of the supernatural, always talked about his experience with inexplicable phenomena. Though reluctant, Ethan agreed to call him. When Jean arrived, he brought with him an aura of confidence that was both comforting and unsettling. He began to examine the house, using equipment that seemed straight out of a horror movie. Ethan watched anxiously as Jean spoke about residual energies and restless spirits. The house has a history, Ethan. Sometimes, emotions get trapped here, like an echo of the past. And Maxime may be sensing something you can't see, Jean said as he adjusted a camera in a corner of the room. Jean's words resonated with Ethan. He had been so focused on the pain of loss that he might have been ignoring signs that something else was happening. With each new explanation, the anxiety grew. What else could he discover about his new life? What more could be revealed about Maxime? A week passed and the situation only worsened. Maxime began to refuse to enter certain rooms in the house, as if he were sensing an oppressive presence. Emily, in turn, began to have nightmares. She would get up at night, calling for her father with fear-filled eyes. With each scream from his daughter, Ethan's heart tightened. He felt powerless, unable to protect his family. The pain of losing his wife seemed to have returned with renewed strength, mingling with the fear of the unknown. One night, while trying to comfort Emily after a nightmare, Ethan realized he needed to be strong. He couldn't let fear dominate their lives. He should be the pillar of strength that his wife would have wanted him to be. But the pressure was immense. Not only did he have to deal with grief and the challenges of being a single father, but now he also faced a puzzle that seemed to go beyond his understanding. Determined to solve the mystery, Ethan began to explore the history of the house. He remembered an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Ruth, who had lived on the same street for decades. Whenever he passed by her house, she greeted him with a kind smile. That day, he decided it was time to ask her about the neighborhood's past. What he didn't expect was for Mrs. Ruth to reveal dark secrets. This house. I've heard many stories about it. They say an old resident had an explosive temper. He didn't handle loss well and, well, some people believe his energy still lingers here, Mrs. Ruth said, looking out the window with a distant gaze. These words echoed in Ethan's mind, and he felt a chill run down his spine. He was beginning to understand that what was happening with Maxime and Emily was not just a coincidence. There was something deeper, a connection between the pain of the past and the present. As he returned home, Ethan felt more confused than ever. He wanted to believe that he could protect his daughter and his new friend, but the shadows of the past seemed to draw closer. What could he do to bring peace to his family and their new home? The weight of responsibility grew heavier, while the determination to fight against the ghosts, both literal and emotional, became increasingly clear. He needed to find a way to face this battle, for himself, for Emily, and for Maxime, who was now a part of his story. Ethan sat at the table, his hands trembling as he looked at the notes he had made about the house's history. Mrs. Ruth's words continued to echo in his mind, and the connection between the pain of the past and the anguish of the present became more evident. He knew he needed to act, but what exactly could he do? The idea of confronting a restless spirit terrified him, and the pressure to protect Emily and Maxime weighed heavily on his shoulders. In the days that followed, the situation at home became unbearable. Maxime, once an energetic and friendly dog, now lived in a state of constant alert. He growled and barked at empty corners, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if he were always on the lookout for something. Each time Maxime behaved this way, Ethan's heart raced. The atmosphere was charged with tension and fear, and Ethan felt that the situation was deteriorating rapidly. One night, after a particularly difficult day when Emily had another nightmare and complained about a shadow in her room, Ethan decided it was time to delve deeper into the stories surrounding the house. He began to research online, scouring forums about paranormal phenomena, trying to find answers. But with each new piece of information he found, his fear increased. He came across accounts of people who had experienced supernatural events and who could not rid themselves of the presences that haunted them. The idea that his family could become one of those stories sent him into a panic. When Jean returned for another visit, Ethan was on the brink of collapse. He laid out his concerns and what he had discovered. Jean listened attentively, but the confidence that emanated from him no longer seemed so reassuring. Ethan, you need to understand that negative energy can intensify if not confronted. Running away is not an option, Jean said, with a serious look. You must prepare to face whatever is here, and that may mean confronting your own fears. These words presented a new kind of challenge for Ethan. Not only was he fighting against the supernatural presence that threatened his family, but he was also battling his own internal demons. The struggle against the pain of losing his wife was still fresh in his mind, and the thought of having to face that pain again left him paralyzed. He felt as if he were in a maze, unsure of which path to take. That night, while trying to find some peace, Ethan decided to enter Emily's room. She was sleeping peacefully, But looking at her serene face made him even more determined. He couldn't let fear take over. He remembered how his wife had always encouraged him to be strong, to fight for what he loved. He needed to find a way to reclaim that strength. However, things did not improve. With each passing day, Emily's nightmares became more frequent and intense. She would wake up screaming, crying for help, and with each scream, Ethan felt the weight of helplessness grow. He tried to comfort her, but inside, doubt and fear were growing. He didn't know how to calm her, when he couldn't even calm himself. One day, in a moment of desperation, Ethan decided it was time to confront what was happening. He organized a spiritual cleansing session, convinced that it would be a way to bring peace to the house. Jean brought some objects and tools, but uncertainty hung in the air. As they prepared the space, Ethan felt the pressure mounting. He was about to open a door that he might not be able to close. During the session, the tension grew. Maxime began to bark furiously as if sensing the altered energy. The very atmosphere seemed to vibrate, and Ethan's heart raced uncontrollably. He tried to stay calm, but with each passing moment, the situation became harder to control. In a moment of desperation, he shouted, challenging the presence he felt in the air. "If you are here, show yourself. Don't be afraid to reveal yourself." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan felt as if the world had frozen. He realized he had gone too far, and guilt began to consume him. What had he done? Now, more than ever, he needed to find a way to deal with this situation, not just for himself, but especially for Emily. He understood he had to confront not only the ghosts of the past but also his own limitations and fears. Ethan knew the battle was just beginning, and he would have to gather all his strength to protect his daughter and himself. But doubt and fear were constant shadows on his journey, and he wondered if he could truly face what was to come. Ethan remained silent, the tension in the room weighing heavily on his shoulders. The room was shrouded in an unsettling twilight, and the echo of his own words still resonated in the air. He hadn't expected the presence he had challenged to respond, but now, in the awkward silence, he began to feel a change. Something was about to happen, and he could feel it in every fiber of his being. At that moment, a biting cold enveloped the space, and the lights in the room began to flicker. Maxime, the dog, stopped barking and cowered, as if sensing an impending storm. Ethan's heart raced as he saw a shadow forming in the corner of the room. It was as if all the pain and agony of the past manifested before him, taking shape and coming to life. In seconds, the atmosphere transformed, and the air felt dense, almost palpable. Ethan felt a wave of despair. He had summoned the presence, and now, seeing it, fear overtook him. The figure approached slowly, and he realized it was not a threatening form, but rather a silhouette of someone he recognized. It was his wife, Clara. His heart broke at the sight of her, and a mix of love and sadness flooded his being. How was this possible? He didn't know whether to feel joy or terror. "Clara?" Ethan whispered, his voice choked. He remembered her smile, the affection she always offered him, but also the pain of her loss. Her presence was a constant reminder of what he had lost. The image of Clara seemed so real, yet at the same time, so distant. He felt torn between the joy of the memory and the pain of absence. Then, the figure began to speak, her voice echoing softly, like a whisper in the breeze. "Ethan, don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you. I need you to listen to me." Her words were like a familiar melody, but Ethan needed a moment to process the situation. He had spent months trying to cope with the loss, and now suddenly, her figure stood before him, like a specter of hope and pain. "Why are you here?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "Why didn't you leave me in peace?" He was confused and, at the same time, relieved. He hadn't expected closure, but the idea of having a conversation with Clara, even if it was a manifestation of his subconscious, brought forth emotions he thought he had buried. "You need to understand, Ethan. What you are experiencing is not just guilt for what happened to me. There are deeper shadows in your life that you need to face," Clara said, and her words struck him like a blow to the heart. He knew he was running from his own demons, but hearing this from Clara made him realize he was trapped in a cycle of pain and denial. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he tried to process the revelation. He had not only lost Clara, But he had also lost the ability to truly live. He had surrendered to fear and pain, allowing it to dominate his life and Emily's life. "I don't know how to face all this," he confessed, his voice choked with emotion. "You need to be strong, not just for yourself, but for Emily. She needs a father to protect and guide her. Don't let fear consume her too," Clara replied, and her words sounded like a call to action. The responsibility weighing on Ethan's shoulders became clearer than ever. He could not allow the past to keep him trapped. He needed to fight for a better future for his daughter. Clara's presence began to fade, and a sense of calm washed over Ethan. He realized that if he truly wanted to protect Emily and confront what was happening, he needed to free himself from his own shackles. He had to stop letting fear and pain dictate his life and face life head-on. When Clara finally vanished, Ethan felt a weight lift away. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to change. Clara's revelation had awakened him to the need to confront his fears, not just the supernatural ones, but also the emotional ones. He could no longer live as a specter, trapped in the past. With this new understanding, Ethan decided it was time to act. He needed to be the father Emily deserved, and that meant fighting not only against the shadows haunting his home, but also against the shadows within himself. It was time to start over, to face the pain and turn loss into strength. The battle was just beginning, but now he felt a bit more prepared to face it. Clara's presence had left a deep mark on Ethan. He felt that, although her figure had disappeared, her words echoed in his mind. The sense of lightness he experienced after the conversation was soon replaced by a new wave of responsibility. He needed to act, but he didn't know where to start. Everyday life awaited him, and the obligations he had set aside during his mourning would not disappear. The next day, as the sun timidly rose on the horizon, Ethan got up with renewed determination. He looked at Emily's bed, where the girl was still sleeping peacefully. His heart was filled with love, but also with worry. He couldn't allow the ghosts of the past to affect her. Determined, he got out of bed and started preparing breakfast. As he scrambled the eggs in the frying pan, his thoughts traveled to the future. He needed to have an honest conversation with Emily. It was time to explain to her that even though Mommy was no longer present, he was there for her. This responsibility frightened him, but he knew it was a necessary step. The image of Clara was still fresh in his mind, and he remembered how much she cared about their daughter's happiness. As soon as Emily woke up, Ethan greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, sweetheart. I made your favorite breakfast," he said, trying to convey the positive energy he now felt. The girl smiled, and that brought him instant relief. They sat at the table, and as they ate, Ethan realized that the conversation he needed to have wouldn't be easy. After breakfast, he decided it was time to talk. "Emily, can we talk for a bit?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The girl nodded, her curious eyes watching him. They sat on the couch, and Ethan began to talk about Clara, sharing stories he knew his daughter would love to hear. He wanted Emily to know that her mother still lived on in the memories and the love they shared. But as he spoke, Ethan felt a wave of sadness. He realized that by remembering Clara, he was also confronting his own pain. The grief that he thought he had overcome was still present. But now, instead of hiding from it, he decided to embrace his emotions. Emily listened attentively, and when Ethan finished speaking, the girl looked into her father's eyes. "Daddy, I miss Mommy," she said, her voice small but filled with sincerity. That statement cut Ethan's heart, but it also made him realize they weren't alone in their pain. They could support each other. "I miss her too, my love," he replied, wrapping the girl in a tight embrace. "But we're together, and we will face this together." After that conversation, Ethan felt revitalized, as if a new light had been ignited within him. However, the challenges were far from over. He knew he needed to return to his professional life, something he had been postponing since Clara's death. The idea of going back to work scared him, but he knew he had to do it not just for himself, but also for Emily. They needed stability. That afternoon, he decided to visit the office. The familiar smell of coffee and the sound of the keyboard were reminders of what he had left behind. Upon entering, he received curious looks from his colleagues. Some were understanding, while others seemed uncertain about how to behave. Ethan felt a pang of anxiety. He didn't want people to see him as a victim of tragedy. He wanted to be seen as a father struggling to rebuild his life. Over time, he began to get involved again in projects. The work was a challenge, but also a valuable distraction. He found himself lost in reports and meetings, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the shadows of the past were fading away. However, when night fell and he returned home, reality hit him like a punch in the stomach. The memories of Clara and her absence became heavy again. One night, while sitting alone in the living room, Ethan looked at Clara's portrait on the shelf. He realized that while he was fighting to move forward, he still wasn't allowing the pain to transform into something positive. He needed to find a way to honor her memory, not just mourn. This led him to think about how he could help others going through similar experiences. Thus, Ethan began to get involved in support groups for grieving individuals. He sat in conversation circles, sharing his story, listening to others, and slowly understanding that pain could transform into strength. He started to realize that his journey wasn't just about himself, but also about helping others find light in the darkness. With each meeting, he felt a little stronger, as if he were fulfilling Clara's legacy by bringing hope to others facing the same darkness. Over time, Ethan began to recognize that the battle he was fighting wasn't just internal. He had new challenges to face, but now he was willing to fight. He was no longer alone, and although the shadows still existed, he felt a little more prepared to confront them. Ethan looked out the window, watching the leaves dance in the wind. Autumn had arrived, bringing with it a palette of vibrant colors that contrasted with the sadness he felt inside. He knew he needed to change, not just for himself, but also for Emily. It was time to leave the shadows of the past a little further behind. By deciding to get involved in support groups, a new perspective began to emerge. In the meetings, he found people carrying their own stories of pain and overcoming. Each account touched his heart, and he felt welcomed. Over time, Ethan realized he wasn't just a spectator. He was, in fact, learning. The shared pain transformed into collective strength. He found himself speaking more than he expected, sharing his experiences honestly, and this vulnerability began to resonate with others. In one of those meetings, a woman named Sarah approached him. She had also recently lost someone dear and, despite the sadness, her determination to move forward was evident. The connection between them grew, and they began to meet outside of their gatherings, sharing coffee and heartfelt conversations. Their friendship became a safe space to vent and find mutual support. Ethan realized that friendship can arise in the most unexpected moments, bringing light in times of darkness. As the days went by, Ethan started working on his own projects, not only at the office but also in his personal life. He decided that he wanted to do something meaningful in honor of Clara. With the help of Sarah and other friends, he launched a community project to help children who had lost one of their parents. The goal was to provide a space where they could feel understood and supported. This new project brought a new sense to Ethan's life. He began to see success in a different way. It was no longer about positions or money, but rather the impact he could have on people's lives. Every smile he received from the children made him feel that he was truly fulfilling a purpose. He remembered how much Clara valued empathy and kindness. By following this path, he felt he was honoring her memory in a deeply meaningful way. Ethan's emotional growth was also reflected in his relationship with Emily. He began to open up more with his daughter, encouraging her to express her feelings. One night, while they were reading a book together, Emily asked, "Dad, do you still miss Mom?" The question, though difficult, brought a new understanding between them. Ethan smiled and replied, "Yes, my love, but I also know she would want us to be happy." This conversation became a milestone. Ethan realized that by accepting his pain, he was teaching Emily to be strong. They began to create new memories, exploring parks and going on outings, and joy started to fill the spaces that sadness had left. Ethan understood that being a father meant being present, and this not only helped Emily, but also helped him heal. As the community project grew, Ethan became a pillar in the community. He started organizing events and fundraisers, bringing people together around a greater cause. The connection he felt with others became stronger and stronger. He realized that the love he had for Clara was not a burden to be carried, but a force that propelled him to help others. The lessons he learned along this journey were invaluable. He understood that life is full of new beginnings, and that each day can bring a new opportunity for growth. Ethan stopped seeing himself as a victim of his story and began to see himself as an agent of change. He realized he was not alone, and that, even in the darkest times, there was always a light to be found. Ethan now walked with more confidence. He still missed Clara, but that absence had become a space for gratitude for the memories they shared. He was learning to live with the longing, and this acceptance helped him move forward. He had discovered that true wealth was not in possessions, but in the connections he formed and the ability to make a difference in someone's life. The transformation he was experiencing was profound, and he was ready to embrace each new day with hope and love. Ethan was about to face his greatest challenge. The community project he had created was at risk. During a meeting, he received the news that the funding for the activities was being cut. Panic set in the air, and despair took hold of everyone present. Ethan felt his heart race. He had invested so much in this cause, not only in time and energy, but also in emotions. The children, the community, and even Clara's memory were tied to this project. He couldn't let it all fall apart. After the meeting, Ethan sat in a corner of the community center, his head in his hands. Sarah approached him, and upon seeing him like that, she sat down beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice low and gentle. "I'm thinking that maybe I'm not enough," Ethan confessed, his voice choked. "I wanted to make a difference, but it feels like everything is falling apart." Sarah looked at him with understanding. "Ethan, you can't control everything. What matters is what you've already done. You've given hope to these children. You've already made a difference." But doubt still lingered over him. He knew he needed to act not just for himself, but for all those lives that depended on the project. The idea of failing and leaving the children without the support they so desperately needed was unbearable. With a deep breath, he decided he would not give up. It was time to fight. That night, Ethan spent hours researching and making phone calls. He reached out to local businesses, seeking partnerships and donations. He also began writing letters to the media, explaining the importance of the project and how it impacted the lives of so many children. His fingers danced over the keyboard, passion guiding him. He was determined to show the community that the project was worth it, that every penny invested could change a child's future. Days went by, and although the pressure mounted, Ethan did not back down. He organized a big event, inviting the entire community. The day of the celebration arrived, and the center was decorated with colorful balloons and tables full of food. There was music, dancing, and most importantly, many smiling children. But the pressure was still there. He needed to raise enough funds to ensure the project's continuity. As the guests enjoyed themselves, Ethan took the stage. He looked at the crowd, his heart pounding. "I want to talk about something very important today," he began, his voice steady despite the anxiety. "This project is not just my dream. It is a refuge for children who have lost someone dear, just like I have. It is a place where we can find hope and healing together, and I need your help." He told his story, how he had lost Clara, and how the pain led him to create that space. Every word he spoke resonated with sincerity and emotion. He saw tears in the eyes of some mothers and smiles of hope on the children. The connection he had cultivated over the months was there, palpable. At the end of the speech, he asked for support. "Let's make a difference together. Every small contribution counts. Let's show these children that they are not alone." He felt the energy in the room shift. People began to applaud, and soon donations started pouring in. One by one, people stood up to contribute, and the atmosphere of despair was replaced by a feeling of unity and hope. After the event, Ethan felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. He had succeeded. The project would not only survive but also grow. More importantly, he had learned to trust himself and the strength of the community. He realized that true wealth was not in the donations but in the connections he had formed and the impact he could have on the lives of so many children. Ethan's journey had not been easy, but he emerged from it stronger and wiser. He learned that it was normal to fail and that sometimes starting over was the only option. He also discovered that true friendship can blossom in the most difficult moments, and Sarah became not just a friend, but a partner in his mission. With a smile on his face and hope in his heart, Ethan looked to the future. He knew Clara would be proud of him. He had found the strength within himself, and was now ready to face any challenge life presented. The longing still existed, but now it was accompanied by gratitude and love, and that made all the difference. After the event, Ethan felt light, as if a great cloud had been lifted. As the donations continued to arrive, he realized that his effort had been worth it. The community had rallied around the project, and he was no longer alone. The children who once seemed distant were now closer than ever, running around the center and laughing, bringing a sparkle of joy to the space he had created for them. The following week, Ethan met with the volunteer team. They sat in a circle, their expressions full of enthusiasm. "Isn't it amazing what we've accomplished?" Sarah said, her eyes shining. "Look at all these donations. We can plan new activities and even bring in professionals to help the children." Ethan smiled, but a shadow of concern still lingered over him. "That's true, but we need to have a solid plan. We can't let the joy of the moment make us forget the difficulties that may still come." One of the volunteers, Miguel, interjected. "Ethan, you are not alone. The community is here to support. We can organize regular events and seek more partnerships. The important thing is to stay united." Miguel's words brought comfort to Ethan. He realized that the trust he had built with the community was not temporary. It was a foundation, a solid base upon which they could build a better future. The project now had a life of its own, and he was just one of many who supported it. As the weeks went by, Ethan dedicated himself to implementing the new ideas discussed in the meeting. He used the donations to create a calendar of activities, including art classes, sports, and even therapy sessions for the children. He realized that every smile and every expression of happiness was a reminder that his work was making a difference. One afternoon, while organizing materials for the next art class, one of the children, Anna, approached him. "Ethan, can you help me draw a house?" "I want my mom to have a beautiful place to live," she said, her eyes shining with hope. Anna's sweetness touched Ethan's heart. He knelt down to her level and smiled. "Of course, Anna. Let's make the most beautiful house in the world, together." As they drew, he remembered how Clara used to dream of a home filled with love and joy. This moment was a tribute to her, and the pain of loss gradually transformed into a new form of love. Days turned into weeks, and life at the community center flourished. The children were more engaged, and the presence of parents became more frequent. The energy that once was despair was now hope and unity. Ethan felt stronger, more confident, and began to envision new possibilities for the project. One morning, while walking through the center, Sarah found him. "Ethan, you have to see this." She pulled him into the room where there was an exhibition of the art created by the children. The walls were covered with vibrant drawings, each telling a unique story. "Look what you helped create," she said, with enthusiasm. Ethan stood in silence, observing the artworks. The simplicity and depth of the children's expressions moved him. He remembered his own journey, how he had started all of this in a moment of pain and uncertainty. Now, those children were using art as a means to express their emotions, to tell their stories. At the end of the day, Ethan sat on a park bench next to the center. He watched the children playing and laughing, and a feeling of gratitude washed over him. He realized that despite the challenges, he had found a purpose. The pain of losing Clara still existed, but now it was accompanied by a new kind of love and connection. "Maybe I don't have all the answers," Ethan thought, "but I know that together we can face any challenge." He smiled as he remembered the words of Sarah and Miguel, and the certainty that he was surrounded by people who truly cared. And so, with a heart full of hope, Ethan decided that he would continue to fight for his cause, not just for himself, but for all the children who needed a home, love, and opportunities. He had found his strength, and now he was ready to move forward, knowing that true change begins when one believes in the power of community and the strength of love. Ethan looked at the community center, now vibrant, filled with laughter and joyful voices. He knew that the transformation of that space was not just physical, but emotional. Each child passing through carried with them the hope of a better future, and Ethan, by their side, had become a beacon of light. He reflected on his journey, from the pain of loss to the rebirth of a new purpose. The community had come together, and he, amidst it all, had found himself again. The activities he helped create not only provided fun, but also a safe space where children could explore their emotions and share their stories. Watching Anna, the little girl who dreamed of drawing a house for her mother, Ethan understood the depth of the impact they were making. Those simple yet powerful moments built not only the children's self-esteem, but also strengthened family and community bonds. Each day, Ethan felt more certain that he had found his place in the world. He was no longer the lonely man hiding behind his pain. He was now part of something greater. Miguel's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that together they could face any challenges. He realized that true success was not in accumulating wealth, but in making meaningful changes in the lives of those around him. The true wealth was the joy he saw in the children and the love spreading through the community. As time passed, Ethan began to plan for the future. He dreamed of expanding the project, reaching more children, and creating an even more inclusive space. He knew that this would require effort and dedication, but he was determined. The lessons he had learned along this journey were invaluable. The importance of resilience, the power of unity, and the beauty of shared love. In a moment of introspection, while gazing at the stars through the window of his small office, Ethan felt a wave of gratitude. He had not only honored Clara's memory, but had also transformed his pain into something positive. The pain had not disappeared, but now coexisted with a renewed love and unwavering determination. He had found redemption by opening up to the community and allowing them to enter his life. Ethan made a decision. He would start a mentorship program where community members could share their skills and experiences with the children. He wanted each of them to know they had a bright future ahead, regardless of their circumstances. Change began with small steps, and he was willing to lead the way. As he wrapped up another day at the center, Ethan addressed the gathered children. With eyes shining with excitement, he announced the news. The children cheered, and he felt that each of those smiles was a recognition that his work was worthwhile. He had become a guide, not only for the children but also for himself. And so, he invited everyone to continue this journey together. The transformation was palpable, and he wanted everyone to feel the excitement of the change to come. He invited each one to share their experiences, their stories, and their hopes. He knew that every voice mattered, and that together they could create an even brighter future. Ethan looked around and, with a smile on his face, said, "Let's build a future together, because each of us has a story to tell, and together we can make a difference." If you feel inspired, like and share this message. Let's spread this positive energy. Change starts now, and you are a part of it. What was the moment that touched your heart the most or left you speechless? We really want to know your opinion. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with us. Your perspective is essential to us and helps us continue bringing exciting stories like this one. If you know someone who would be moved by this story, be sure to share it with them. And if you love these inspiring narratives, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be the first to know whenever we release a new story. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like it. We look forward to reading your opinions in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Until the next exciting story.